Trio for the Hidden is my last white installation. It is perhaps the most enigmatic and the most complex installation, also as far as the technique is concerned. It's not only drawing on cotton, but it's also application. It's the use of silk that's applied to the cotton. But at the same time, it's a kind of charming little installation, evocative of Venetian painting, especially by Tiepolo, and of Venetian music. Everybody who remembers Venice will immediately recognize the white Venetian masks worn during the carnival. Those masks were once worn by doctors and gravediggers during the plague. They put into the long noses, they put some herbs so that they would prevent infection. The plague has often been a metaphor of other things, of moral plague. Already in the book of Camus, it's a metaphor for fascism rising. So the plague is a metaphor for many ills and evil doings of humans. The masks and the allusions to the plague are sort of evocative of my mother's history. A person who was a Jewish, Polish, German woman who lost her entire family during the Holocaust and went then, after the death of her first husband, into hiding and stayed in hiding all of her life. Soon after my birth, she turned into a schizophrenic. She saw eyes, she saw ears in the walls, she heard voices. And she was somebody, and one probably of very many people after wars and ethnic cleansings and similar situations, people who are so thoroughly masked that the mask gets grown to the face. And it's only late in my life that I realized to what an extent I was actually inspired by all of this. I was tortured by it as a child, I was tortured in it but as a grown up, but I was also inspired. My mother was an amateur pianist, and she was a lover of Venetian music. And once, when I still lived in New York, during martial law in Poland, she wrote to me on a postcard that I can't imagine how important it is for such a person as she is to hear Venetian music, for a person who is actually hiding in the folds of time. So from this postcard, I have derived the title of this entire retrospective. And this installation is not only my last white installation, it's the last installation done during my mother's life. She died a few months later. And for me, it's the end of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century. After 20 years of almost exclusive work in red on white, with here and there small additions of blue, in the Trio for the Hidden, the yellow appeared for the first time in the eyes of the musicians and in the instruments. And I was still unaware of the symbolic quality of this color, that later it dawned on me that it was a very important color in my mother's hallucinations, that when I was a child, she often hallucinated of yellow appearing in the sky, yellow smoke, yellow stars, yellow birds. And this must have come back to me in this installation, but in a way I was really not completely aware of. Later, after her death, when I actually discovered her history, all this came back, and I began to work in yellow in a conscious way. But the unconscious must come first in art. Maybe that's the whole thing about art, that it's guiding us intuitively before we discover the facts. So the yellow has, of course, it's a very important color in the history of Jews, the discrimination and the persecution, the being forced to wear this color to be seen from far away is a color that's signaling a lot. And so here I used it in this rather playful and innocent way. Later I used it in a more cruel way. Everybody who knows Venetian painting, the frescoes by Tiepolo, will see the kind of commedia dell'arte atmosphere. And I must say that this type of atmosphere could be found in our home on Frascati Street, a street and the neighborhood called by my mother our little Italy. I presume that she had some sort of a connection to Italy and Venice, or perhaps only in her imagination, but all of those elements, which I have hinted at in my books, Venice being mentioned to me when I was already 3 or 4 years old, the music that I always heard, had the impression that we had formed. Today, I have this impression that after the war, my mother stayed in hiding in her little Italian ghetto on Frascati Street. On the other side was already what she called the Black Sea, all the ruins of Warsaw she never wanted to look at. And here I am playing all the instruments my mother wanted us to play. She wanted us to play piano and violin and to be musicians. And I turned to become a painter and a writer, something she regretted. So for her, I am again a cellist and a flutist and a violin player and so on and so forth. But all of this has this slightly grotesque and uncanny and mysterious atmosphere, as in a certain way subconscious, in a certain way maybe conscious, as I was not yet ready to disclose any of the family mysteries. I had to know more, I had to grow older, and finally, in my trilogy, Goldi, Frascati, Felluni, I told about this history in sort of glimpses from my life. But this installation is very intuitive and very enigmatic, is foreshadowing my search, by far more realistic, for what was hidden behind this facade, for what was hidden behind the little ghetto of the Frascati Street. Some of the figures, as you can see, the lines turn into nothing. They come apart. The line ends and you have a string. So both the bodies and the instruments, everything is slightly coming apart.